frog begins swimming across the river, and halfway across the river, the scorpion buries his stinger into the frog's back. The frog feels the stinger and starts to seize up from the poison and says, "But why would you do that? Because now we'll both drown." And the scorpion says, "Mr. Frog, I can swim."
Hey, Eldritch Wizard. This is my reply to your reply to my Scorpion Nature video. And I only got sidetracked for 10 days since I saw it. So for me, I guess this is an almost instant reply. Your video raises any number of interesting side issues for me about this whole Scorpion Nature thing, and I'm going to try to go through them referencing your video. But I did want to just at the outset say that I wasn't actually telling the Scorpion fable to make a point about Hollywood. I was using a Hollywood story to illustrate some aspects of the Scorpion fable, and it certainly does apply in Hollywood, but it was more about the Scorpion fable than Hollywood. However, your reply ends up sewing the two subjects together for me in ways that hopefully I'll get to. So here we go.
So the fable now actually becomes more about winning and advantage.
Okay, I disagree. This is not my point. This is a preliminary, a pre-point, if you will. How is it winning for the Scorpion? The Scorpion was not in a contest, any kind of a contest that would mean anything to a Scorpion.
The concept of the Scorpion is actually able to swim, and it isn't going to drown regardless of whether he stings the frog or not, is more interesting to me than a parable about the nature of being evil.
Okay, to develop the emerging theme here a little further, in this rewrite, which by the way I'd never heard before, but I've heard stories like it. I wish I could remember what they were, but I'll try to get to that at the end here. In this rewrite of the Aesop fable, the Scorpion isn't a scorpion really anymore. Because in the Aesop's fable, the Scorpion is assumed to have certain characteristics, and the fable illustrates those characteristics to teach a lesson to the listeners. The Scorpion, and this is this is an important point which I'm actually going to get back to in a completely separate third Scorpion Nature video. The Scorpion is not evil. The Scorpion is literally just obeying its nature. It doesn't kill the frog because it hates the frog or because its motive was to kill the frog. Its motive was to get across the river. It really couldn't swim. But just because of its nature, because it can't help but strike out at anything that gets too close, it killed the frog and killed itself. And the lesson of the fable for human beings who are frog-like hearing this fable, the lesson is when you see someone that you recognize as having Scorpion nature, don't make the mistake of assuming that you can trust them because it's in their rational self-interest not to hurt you. That's a good lesson for human beings dealing with someone who has, quote, Scorpion nature, but it doesn't say anything necessarily about the goodness or evil of the Scorpion-natured person that you're looking at. It just says that certain people can't help but hurt you in certain circumstances, and if you know what those circumstances are, don't use reason to make a logical case for the scorpion not to hurt you. The scorpion will hurt you in those circumstances, no matter how irrational it may seem. And for the scorpion-natured person hearing this fable, if they're sufficiently introspective to recognize themselves as a scorpion-natured person, the lesson of the fable is, if you know that you can't help doing certain things in certain circumstances and you don't want to do those things, don't get into those circumstances. But in this new version that you're telling, the scorpion isn't a scorpion anymore. The scorpion has no motive but to kill the frog. And not only to kill the frog, but to psychologically destroy the frog in its moment of death by revealing that it has been tricked into being killed for no other purpose than to kill it.
The scorpion doesn't really need to have the frog carry him across. The frog is just an innocent victim in much the same way that the frog is in the Hollywood producers' version of the story.
Now, this is not the same thing as the Hollywood rewrite. That is a deceptive rewrite from a perspective that might be the scorpion's perspective, or might simply be the perspective of someone who wants to excuse scorpions. And the interesting thing, those people that told the story, I can't remember all the people that I heard, but the one that I do remember was Ron Howard. Now, Ron Howard is easily the most famously nice guy, nice, super successful guy in Hollywood. You know, in Hollywood, everybody's flaws and nasty behavior gets out in gossip, and you just never hear any bad gossip about Ron Howard's behavior. I mean, the worst anybody can say about him is he's, you know, as a filmmaker, he's the Opie of the masses. Sorry, little pun there. But so basically, when Ron Howard was telling it, that threw me for a double loop, because I was saying, why is he telling it that way? Rather than a self-excuse, it became an excuse for others, assuming that he doesn't actually have any scorpion nature himself. It's like a frog excusing the scorpion, if you will. A frog who has somehow learned to live among scorpions, and making an excuse, or possibly just revealing the fact that a whole lot of Hollywood scorpions do manage to get to the other side of the river before they sting the poor hapless frog. But in any case, those stories are not about an evil scorpion creature, an evil creature whose goal is to kill a frog. It's a story about nature that you can't overcome. But in your version, it's a story about something lurking behind the mask of a scorpion.
It becomes a parable for people with scorpion nature, because it's more about what you let your adversaries know and how you use their lack of knowledge against them.
But you're not talking about a scorpion. You're talking about... What are you talking about? A demon?
And I guess it's a pretty cynical and despicable way of looking at it. But I mean, it's a version of the story that I've heard. And
well, the secular version of that would be a serial killer. Your scorpion is not a scorpion at all. It's a serial killer. The only thing it achieves by tricking this frog and then killing this frog is the pleasure of killing the frog. It doesn't feed itself. It doesn't get itself across a river. It has zero motive for doing this except to, number one, trick the frog, number two, kill the frog, and number three, let the frog know that I, the scorpion, have killed you by trickery. And the pleasure of watching something that is dying know that it has been tricked by a superior, what, intelligence?
It becomes a parable about lying, and how to be deceptive, which I guess is not really something noble or anything like that.
I found that to be totally fascinating, even though it completely violates the idea of the scorpion fable, because it ends up being another ultra-popular Hollywood story. The story of the serial killer.
The fact that people in Hollywood don't use that version, they just have a simplistic, happy ending kind of version of the original fable, does not come as a surprise to me, because when you look at the trash that comes out of Hollywood, it's all pretty much exactly like that. It's being made by people who have that kind of simplistic, uneducated, oh, everything will work out in our favor kind of mentality.
I spent 9 years as a script reader in Hollywood, a script analyst, as we like to call ourselves. And I learned many weird lessons about the sheer percentages of what's out there in terms of scripts that people are trying to get made into movies. And one of the things that I realized in reading these, on top of seeing all the movies that actually end up getting made, because the scripts, there are far, far more scripts. There are 50,000 original scripts or something like that every year written and registered in Hollywood. That's just the ones that are registered. So vast majorities of scripts that get written don't get made. And one of the things I realized is that for a certain large percentage of would-be screenwriters and successful screenwriters, the serial killer is a kind of Walter Mitty fantasy of what they would like to be able to accomplish in life. The serial killer is a metaphor for total freedom expressed as total malice. And of course the number one model of this is Hannibal Lecter, who does not resemble any real life serial killer that anyone has ever documented. He represents a kind of, devil, a glamorous devil. From Seven to Saw, there's this metaphor of the serial killer as a kind of anti-god, or not a monster who kills people, tricks them and manipulates them and kills them for a higher moral purpose. And the moral purpose is you can just feel that the screenwriters and the directors who come after are identifying with this moral purpose, this idea that that some human being can pass righteous judgment on humanity as a whole, and then teach them a lesson from the exalted position of serial killer. It feeds into the theistic imagination of a punishing but righteous God, because basically these serial killers, if you watch the movies, you will see that the movie skews the moral lesson toward the serial killers, even as, for the sake of conventional morality or whatever, they're stopped. Like at the end of Seven, Kevin Spacey's character somehow morally wins by getting Brad Pitt's character to kill him. And then, of course, in the Saw films, the cancer patient is just teaching people to love life. And those are two big popular examples that got made, but they're just endless variations of that. And so this story that you told, which is not a valid Aesop's fable, not a valid fable based on the nature of scorpions or even the imagined nature of scorpions, is a perfect example of this fascination with the malicious trickster who wins out in the end, and sends people to their destruction through trickery and pure malice. And it's just such a short tick from that to a God that sends you to hell from righteous malice, you know?